So the theme of today is open science, and the keynote speaker talked about the not just open science, but also the essence of the science itself. The open science that I treated so far was the European Commission and also Obama administration's e-science, digital science based type of open science. So I rather studied on the policy side and also the community-wise activities for modern science or some procedures or protocols or scholarly procedures. Those are the discussion I got mainly involved. So open access journal was one thing, but I more so focused on the digital data. So I don't know how much I can cover within the time allocated, but I'm planning to speak in Japanese. 私は日本語で話していきます。ここ2週間よく眠れませんでしたので、脳のコンピューターが英語で喋るようなエネルギーがないので、今日は日本語で話したいと思います。オープンサイエンスのバックグラウンドというのはもうすでに分かっていらっしゃると思います。ので私が話をする内容というのは少し想像していただけるんじゃないかと思います。Alright, then I turn to Japanese. So whether I should introduce myself or not, organizer told me that my contents are very similar to the other one. But anyway, my specialty is geophysics, atmosphere, and also space science. I served as board members and then professors and an AUG and an IGUUs, these international institutions that I've been reporting the data science activities to them because I want to contribute something from Japanese academia too. I also a member of the Science Council of Japan, and then that was a starting point of my getting involved in the data science. I also a member of the expert panel of the Open Science of Cabinet Office. And as for G7 Open Science Working Group, I touched upon this many times. So I was originally involved in geophysics, and the government of Japan and all other governments are the same in a sense that they usually provide to 3 to 5 years of a grant so that they decide the policy so that after 3 or 5 years that there will be a great technology to help the society. But it is not true. The science is that the accumulation of the logics, and you have to go through a very tedious work and exploring the probably correct way to take, and at the end you get the fruit of the science such as smartphones and then airplanes, and all these products of the science are the result of the tedious work of the study. But usually officers forget about these long winding road of research, and then they just put the 3 or 5 years grant and expect the great outcome of it. And that is because of the miscommunication between the science and also the society. So that's why we have to study the policy. My talk is rather abstract, but I always hope that the policymakers, decision makers, and also the people who can decide the future of the science should be aware of this, like saying about putting a BOY in data or set the policy should be in alignment with the data. And all these things are very critical, and I'm also working in that area. However, if I just tackle only that area, it does not mean anything unless I cover very comprehensively. 2013, last 3 4 years, I've been talking about this, but scientists are working on a tedious work, and they are rather autonomous. And when the government decide on the science policy, I always try to convince them so that it has to have a long-term view when it comes to the science research. So that was a context that I would like to talk. I have replaced my PowerPoints, so some of the slides that you cannot find in your handouts, but I always talk about the political background and also the system of the open science, really shared the very basics of the keynote speaker. So international science norm, the International Council for Science is operating the data committee and also World Web Systems. And not just in the science academia, but also on the digital platform and infrastructure of the society, there is the people who are trying to change the overall data structure. By doing so, we have to have lots of associations of academia and also council of the science that we all have to work together. Time is passing so quickly. So international organizations and other seminars, when you hear the word open science, people understand that we share data so that we can all participate in the study. When I first encountered with the word the open science, I was really intrigued. In the G8 science minister's statement, there was a discussion, and I was told that my study is very close in the nature with that. So policymakers in politics and also academia. So both areas that the open science was a theme. When I first started talking about this, the audiences were rather puzzled that why we have to talk about it. But recently, people started discussing about it. Several years ago, the people who didn't really understand the concept. But 2016 Science Ministers meeting with Mr. Hayashi, I gave a talk about the open science. So open science working group was established and discussed about its incentive and data infrastructure criticalities were agreed by the ministers. So last year, the G7 held in Italy, we discussed what to do for the future. The critical thing here is that it's not just mentioning open science in the ministerial meeting. The researchers, librarians, students, publishers, and also private sectors, all these things are very important. But some of the things have to be done in top-down manner. Otherwise, we cannot make any progress unless we have the directory or orders from the top executives. Otherwise, we can just make a fuss, cannot make any progress. Not many people do not understand that point in domestic academia. So at the science ministers meeting, I shown this slide to give message to the politicians. Data is closely related to the mutual trustworthiness between science and society, and this is the asset for the human society and also a very important outcome of the researches. So when it comes to Japan, at the Cabinet Office came up with the national principle of open science, and then this was a report, and you can also refer to it both in English and Japanese. And Ms. Yoko Harayama is the executive member of the SISTI. Chairman is Professor Arikawa, the president of the Kyushu University, but this was a very important organization, and I'm also a member there. So today, the publishers and then librarians are also here in this room, so I would like to include that perspective. This is the chart shown in the Cabinet Office website. Cabinet Office is here. Relevant agencies, funding agencies, and research institutions are all here. But libraries and repositories are also positioned in this chart, which is very important. We have Science Council of Japan, and the professional societies are here, and the journal publishers, and the science system have to change their mode to accommodate the needs of the current society. National universities rather mainstream in Japan. So when these talks comes from the agencies to the national universities, and usually laws are devised so that data have to be disclosed. And we really have to change the culture. So we should not have this type of the mandatory opening up of the data. That's why the scientific society have to be a member here, so they don't have any law-abiding type of the work. So the context is this. The traditional science methodology is this: question, hypothesis, analysis, and conclusion. This is the conventional scientific workflow. This is shown on the textbook for the students, but to announce the papers at the conference, when it comes to disinterestedness, is fairness. So, open discussion and criticism should be done in the seminars and symposium, and that is a very important process for the data providers. And in a private company, even though you have this cycle, it won't be everybody's understanding, so you can't really make progress. So thesis played a very important role to make the audience aware of this. And again, we have to go back whether paper can be verified. We have a data diagram. Let's say like climate change data has changed last 20 years. So that's why we have to really have this. But some may question that whether these data are really correct or not. You have to have a very solid data to back it up.
The word data science is here as a very important factor. Well, my impression is I took doctor's degree in 1993, and actually I wrote doctoral thesis paper based on the data. I think there was already a established data science there. And my mentors, their thesis papers, the data they used were the level of the data, so that they can really write down with the size of the data table. But in my day, the size of the data was not so small. So actually, the statistical process was really necessary. Actually, the mode change was actually taking place at that time. Reproducibility and also reproductivity of the data, reproducibility of the data. So the several the attachment, so the peripheral things and that needs to be moving out. But my focus here is about the data. Data is not everything, but data is the very first step. And just confirming what I mentioned earlier, so IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the report from here, that has been impacting to societies significantly. And to create this, so thousands of the specialist researchers gathered to write the one paper. So having this kind of a community consensus is very important for the knowledge and the intellectual the knowledge establishment. And so the outcome of this will also contribute to the change of a society. So this is really a kind of a good example. So let me skip this slide. And by doing these things, needless to say, doing the research and making available to the public, and with a citation and reuse. So by running this cycle, the science, the operations has been done. The consensus here, so scientific understanding consensus here, so once it's actually shared to the public, then it's going to be quite useful, really useful. So if we just want to satisfy ourselves that okay, so that we really showing the great technology and satisfying that, then that's it. But actually, so without sharing to the public and without passing on to the next generation, we cannot really have the evolution or advancement. So what we are doing is not really the hobby. So without passing the others, researchers and generations, we cannot really make the evolution of society. So doing the research here is it really good enough for us to receive the public funding to continue the research? So it is necessary to pass the research and the data. I think the existence of the repository of the library is quite important. So otherwise we cannot really continue our research. So the system, actually we have been continuing this. So the system, even without noticing that, when the modern society was actually incorporated to us, actually the legislatively, actually the setup of the library was a legal mandate due to the based on the law. But now, actually, so that was the base of the modern society, modern academic evolution. But now, actually, the people are discussing that the physical libraries are no longer necessary in Asia. So maybe, actually, in Asia, actually the consideration based on the history are not really done. So if the digital structure is done, then the physical structure is disappearing. Actually, the structure of the college and the college research will be disappearing. And I think the protecting science means protecting ourselves and protecting science, and also that means protecting ourselves, and also that means protecting the world culture, global culture. In Japan, how we can really sort of continue the methodology of the sort of modern science is sort of one important question we should keep asking. And printing culture in over 300 years, and by spending so many years, so the printing technology has been contributing the evolution of the science very well. But on the other hand, so the digital media has very short history, so even less than so the 100 years. But it's really sort of spread quite rapidly, and so that everyone really has a sense of so the issues. But as a sort of media, so actually, it is still sort of questionable that that new digital media can be trustworthy to like the sort of paper media. So researchers actually that have been sort of created the sort of technology, but to make the new technology to the sort of social base foundation, actually the researchers are not really enough. So now, so that we have the librarian and so the other people and so the government and so the other people are really getting involved, joining, and so the discussing so the globally. I think I'm almost running out of time, and so to respond to the digital infrastructure, so many things needs to be changed, and so the geoscience has been the main, but from the medical to engineering and so the others, so added, and the social science is also included. So we are considering so the how to handle the data science. So to accumulate the sort of data, core trusted seal, so which is a new depository search certification. So with the WDS and data seed approval organization started this idea. This means so reliability, so cybersecurity. Other than that, in order to ensure that so the data's the sort of value in a sort of longer term, so the international frame is really necessary. This page. This is from the so NIH page. ISC WDS. Actually, there are so the difference in levels. So I think so it says it is really necessary the sort of global authentication. So in order to do the implementation sort of globally, digital market strategy is discussed globally, and the Japanese government have the so the 5.0 so the structure scheme. So actually, so it might take 20 years, 30 years. Culture, industry, education, everything needs to be changed in reality. So this is a 5-year strategy plan, but this matter is not really something that you can complete in a 5 years' time. So in the world of internet, actually this discussion is also going on. So connectivity, interoperability would lead to the so the digital economy. So this is the point that so the IT so the world is really sort of discussing very much about. Maybe I'd better finish here. And I discussed that the political agreement, I mean, through funding and through governing ministry, so researchers are so they're really affected by that. But throughout this process, international so the common understanding is really necessary. Otherwise, this system would not work. And the researcher top and management, library, archive, depository. So these things are not really considered as the so the simple supporter of the research, but so those parts so should be understood as a so the important part of the so the framework. So indispensable so the partner, and so for them so the continuing to exist as an indispensable partner would contribute to and so the would become a so very important part of the foundation of the science. Well, thank you very much for your attention.